Joining me right now, Isaiah Payne from the Spokane Home Builders Association. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And first, we'll start with this confidence index that was just released today. National index. Is it as self-explanatory as it is? Explain, what is the confidence index?
Yeah, so our National Association of Home Builders, which we're a part of here with our local Spokane chapter, and really this is a survey of our members across the nation and kind of measuring their confidence. So similar to like a consumer confidence metric, asking what they think is happening in the market and how confident they are in investing and starting up new development. So really what any market wants is predictability, they want consistency. And so there's some questions around there, not knowing exactly what's going on, and really that uncertainty is going to drive up some of the numbers that we see, and there's uncertainty there. And so the consumer confidence, the builder confidence is a little bit lower than it has been in the last handful of months.
So it's a 42 right now, down from 47. What does that mean? I mean, concerns nationally, but here locally, what is the attitude of Spokane home builders?
Yeah, there's some of these same questions, right? What's going to happen with some of the tariffs? So a lot of goods, particularly lumber, appliances, there's some significant imports there. And so a lot of the materials that are needed for construction come from other countries. And so what that impact is going to be on the cost of doing business, on the cost of these goods, there's some questions there and not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And locally too, we have a number of issues that our members are looking at that create some uncertainty. When Olympia is in session, we're always not sure exactly how things are going to shake out. And so things like rent control and that bill that's been proposed, that's something that typically hasn't achieved the goals that have been set out there. You look at other places around the country that have attempted to implement this sort of thing. But what it does do, and we see across the board, is that it kind of stymies development. It makes people less confident about entering into that marketplace. So not uncertainty there, what's going to happen with that. We certainly want to see some movement in changing some of the regulations, making some of those boundaries that are there or some of those regulatory burdens, seeing some of those reduced in order to bolster the confidence there with development. We haven't seen those bills really moving as much when it comes to transparency and permitting timelines or the way we look at subdividing lots. And so we'd love to see some of those things also have some movement. I think that would raise some of the confidence among builders here in the state and locally.
The 42 is a national confidence level.
Right.
Is there any strengths or weaknesses here locally versus the national confidence? Are we looking better in other areas that they might not be?
Yeah, I think there's some questions around some of the energy codes and those things that are happening there. So if you recall, this last election cycle, voters made their voice heard on Initiative 2066 to say that natural gas shouldn't be penalized or degraded as an energy source. That is now enshrined in law. There's a RCW there, but we haven't seen local jurisdictions or the state building code council move as quickly on that. And so there is some legal action at the state level. We're working with local entities, but that's about a $40,000 cost for each new construction home to have all electric versus natural gas. And so again, just that uncertainty and not knowing, hey, is this going to get implemented? If I submit my permit, am I going to be allowed to do what the law says? Those questions there do kind of decrease that confidence and put us in a little bit more precarious, uncertain situation.
Any pinch points for supply locally here that you can think of that we should be concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about building and costs, we think about kind of three buckets. So land, labor, and lumber, meaning kind of all supplies. And one of the things that we're really looking at this year with the 2026 comp plan with the county and various jurisdictions is that land piece. So we've had a freeze on our urban growth boundary, or kind of that imaginary line where we can't do development outside of it. It's been frozen since 2013, and we've seen land prices roughly 6x in that time. So again, the more costly the land is, the more expensive the home is going to be. And really what we want is the average person to be able to afford to purchase a home. Right now that number is about 15% locally. So really the only people who can afford to purchase a home are people who already have a home. It's not really what we want. Home ownership has all sorts of socioeconomic goods that we see, and things like education level and mental health go up with home ownership. So we'd love to see that more at equilibrium. And so the things that we can do to bring down some of that regulatory cost, we estimate it's about 30% of the cost of the home is fees and regulation. And so, that shouldn't be zero. Like we need some guidelines and some regulation there. But the more regulation we add, the more things we do, like with natural gas, the more expensive it is, and then the average person gets priced out and can't afford to experience the benefits of home ownership.
You mentioned labor in the 3 L's there. Where does labor stack up in that?
Yeah, workforce, it certainly has some issues too, right? We're undersourced there. We need more workers to enter the trades. We're seeing those age out. And so a lot of folks who've been around in the trades are now reaching that retirement age. We actually have a nonprofit called Frame Your Future, working with schools and helping people see that there is a lot of benefit to being a part of the trades. It's a great entrepreneurial enterprise for young people looking to get into the workforce and maybe starting their own business. It's a really short timeline and pipeline to be able to do that in the trades. We also think it's relatively AI proof. There's some folks here building some robots. They're not quite there to build a house yet. So it's a strong economy to join. It's a really great opportunity for young people. And so, making sure that the trades and the construction trades are viewed in a way by our students and by our education system as a really great option for people to enter into the workforce, to get paid to learn, and then have an opportunity to go and make a good living for yourself.
And talking about the lumber, we get a lot of Canadian lumber.
Yep.
With the potential tariffs looming. They're on pause right now, but what's the outlook on those? What's the uncertainty there? What can consumers expect if those get implemented?
Yeah, well, we saw some of this with COVID as well. We had a lot of supply issues with our local American lumber industry, and so we worked with Congress and looked at the Canadian lumber tariffs to get more lumber here. And so that's certainly the same ask that we have of the current Congress and of this administration, is to recognize that we don't want to increase home costs in a way that's going to be detrimental to the public. And so when we think about goods that are used in the construction of the home, so that's lumber, that's steel, that's appliances, all those things, we want to make sure we're looking at that in a way that we're holding up this value of home ownership, and for the average person to be able to grow wealth, grow equity for them and their family and their future.
Do you picture, if they're implemented as they're presented now, a major cost increase for home buyers in our area because of them?
Yeah, if lumber is more expensive, then the overall cost is going to be more expensive, and it just means that fewer people are able to purchase a home. So we want to keep those costs down. Obviously, the more that we can grow our local economy too, and bring the average median income up as well, those are things that we're interested in as well. So a strong housing economy has both of those things going on, and it's a betterment for the community.
You've talked about legislation out of Olympia. We're about halfway through the legislative session there.
Yeah.
Specifically, is there anything that you're optimistic about, anything that you're specifically worried about?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, I think rent control is an issue there that is going to decrease the amount of development that happens, and is going to increase costs. One way that our members, that folks locally can engage in growing some equity and investment opportunity is by renting out a house and owning a house. And there are a number of folks that we've talked to who have maybe one or two, and it's a good additional income. And they're also closer to the renter. They have a good relationship. They care about what's going on in that situation. When we increase regulation, we increase those costs, we're going to push out some of those smaller entities. And then we're going to end up with much larger entities who are controlling these things, who maybe aren't reinvesting here locally, who don't have that kind of relationship. So, we think certainly we want some, we have a lot of attention there on rent control and making sure it actually does what we want it to do. And again, what we've seen is that it really only means that development doesn't happen. And there are a handful of bills as well that we are optimistic about. There's one dealing with the hearing examiner process, with permitting, some really kind of nerdy stuff, but things that we think will streamline the process when it comes to permitting and how we look at our land development. And the quicker we can move through those things and get houses to market, and it's really what we need. We need more supply. That's what's going to equalize rents. That's what's going to help level out the prices, is getting more supply. So we need more housing now, and so really cutting out some of those unnecessary lengthy processes are going to help us produce more supply, and that's going to help the market.
Recent news here in the city of Spokane looking to temporarily, perhaps permanently, ditch height limits within the downtown area. Is there a world where new condos, new apartments in downtown Spokane happen? What does that look like?
Yeah, we think that's definitely a good measure. I mean, having restrictions that, again, that are going to disincentivize investment in our community, it's a great measure. It's interesting you bring up condos. I mean, there is significant legislation or law right now in Washington State that is pretty restrictive on condos, and again, that ownership piece. And so we'd love to see some of that continue to be adjusted to where we can have condos and even smaller homes or multiplexes and different options for people. So, housing we think of as a ladder, right? And so we want people to be able to progress along that ladder, to move from being in their parents' basement to being in their first apartment to purchasing their first home to then a larger home for their family, right? Those are all connected. And really what we see is that this rung between renting and owning has gotten further apart. And what we'd love to see is some of that kind of missing middle, is maybe a term that you've heard before. And so we want to kind of create that additional rung that we need in the ladder. And so that looks like townhouses, that looks like reducing our restrictions on condos, so that if we do build these structures downtown, there'll be ownership opportunities for people. That's really what we're focused on. We want housing choices, so we need all of everything, more of everything, as well as home ownership opportunities. Those are kind of two driving values we have as an industry and as an association.
Do you think the city of Spokane is being builder friendly at this time, or is there something they could do to be more builder friendly?
Yeah, I think that we talk about kind of that builder confidence and some of that uncertainty. When we see things like moratoriums that are in Latah, we're taking a big section of the city and not allowing development there. We see a lot of infrastructure gaps, so places where we could maybe build more, but the infrastructure isn't there. So for example, in West Central, there's parts of that neighborhood that still have clay pipes. And so that's not conducive to more density. And so, the more we can work on our infrastructure plans and fixing some of those funding gaps and infrastructure gaps that are there, the more we can get away from being this, anti-building in certain neighborhoods, and there's other places that have been talked about. Again, when we think about builder confidence, those pieces of uncertainty really add to the mix. And so then we have people who are questioning, well, is this an investment that I should make? Is this a good partner that's there for me? And so the more we can reduce that uncertainty, and that'll help people be willing to invest and bring those dollars here to our city.
What do you think matters most to Spokane home builders right now? Is it federal policy? Is it local policy? What's affecting you the most?
Yeah, there's some of all of it. We're part of a federated model, and so anyone who's a member with our association, which is about 750 members in Northeast Washington, are part of our local association. We also have part of a state association, part of a national association. So our association really does work along all three of those levels, and we need those things all working together. So things like lumber supply at the national level is important and affects the entire industry. We see a lot of regulation coming down at the state level. So we do a lot of work to spend some time there and see, hey, what's the temperature here, what's going on, what things are coming that are either going to build confidence or decrease confidence in the industry. Are we making it easier? Are we making it more expensive? I mean, one of the things that we talk about, we can't make housing more affordable by making it more expensive, right? Mm-hmm. And so the more regulation we have, the more fees that we have, the less it's able for people to participate in the housing economy, and then they can't purchase a home, they can't really grow that equity, that generational wealth for their family. So that's really our focus. There's a lot coming down from Olympia that's restrictive, and there's more that's being proposed. And so really that balance, how do we balance out these needs and making sure that housing choice and that home ownership are really the paramount values that we have as we look at the housing industry.
It sounds like you just answered this question, but just in case you want to add something more specific to it, this confidence level here on a national scale, we're feeling it here on the local scale as well. How do you raise it? How do you get it up?
Yeah, I think there's, we've talked about it, right? So it's a regulatory environment that incentivizes building instead of being restrictive. There are different housing types that we need to look at. Smaller houses on small lots is really what's more affordable for the average person. And so how do we allow for those housing types and those options? So again, we want to close that gap between renting and ownership. We know from a survey that was done of renters that about 80% of people who are in apartments are actively looking or would like to own a home, right? So how do we make sure that that desire for our community, that the value that people have, that we're providing those opportunities? And so the more consistency we have, so again, moratoriums or massive facility charge fee increases, those sorts of things make people kind of pump the brakes. They go, hey, I don't know the way this is going to go. This investment is long term, from your platting to permitting to actually building, and then that certificate of occupancy. That's a long process. That's a lot of time that those dollars are tied up, that investment's being made. A lot of time and a lot of energy. And so it's not just hey, is this a stock I want to buy and then not think about like buying a little bit of crypto, right? This is a long-term 2-3 year investment into a partnership. And so knowing that there's going to be an environment, knowing that there's going to be positive feedback, there's going to be incentives that help us get more houses now, that's what we're looking for.
Anything from a market or a policy perspective that we haven't discussed that you think is important right now when it comes to home building, the confidence index, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, really the big things that we're working on right now on the local level is that we talked about natural gas, so that implementation of the natural gas law and making sure we're not continuing to penalize those energy sources that the voters have said they want to allow. Really when we look at land use and making sure we're strategic in our expansion of our urban growth area, making sure that we have enough land to meet the demand. It's really not true that there's enough land right now to meet the demand. If that were the case, we wouldn't see prices skyrocketing the way that they have. And so we really need to be smart in the way that we approach the comp plan that's happening right now and will be culminating in 2026. We want to make sure that we provide places for people to go. We have this relief valve in North Idaho, and so there's been a lot of growth that's gone there. Those are people who mostly are working in Spokane. They want to be here. They want to be a part of the community, and we're simply not making the space for them. And so, there are a lot of impacts from that happening. In 2021, the city of Post Falls permitted as many units as the city of Spokane and the county of Spokane combined, right? So a lot of growth happening there. Amazon didn't relocate, right? It's not economic growth that's driving that housing. They're still working in Spokane. But they're not contributing to the tax base here in Spokane, right? Their gas tax, their sales tax, their property tax is across the border. And again, they want to be a part of this community, and we don't have a regulatory environment that allows us to build houses fast enough to meet that demand. And so, we want to see really an approach that says, hey, we know these people are here, we know they want to be in our community, and we're not going to say no, we're going to say yes, we're going to make sure we have enough housing to meet the need, and it's not going to be at a cost that's unattainable for people who work here, who want to live here, for people who are graduating and looking, where do I want to live? Where do I want to be? Where can I afford to be? Right now, it's not Spokane, and that's really unfortunate.
All right, Isaiah Payne, Spokane Home Builders Association, thank you so much for being with us.
Appreciate it.